Hello everyone, Ryan here. Transmetropolitan, Back on the Street, by Warren Ellis and Derek Robertson. Published by Vertigo Comics. I thoroughly enjoyed this graphic novel. Now granted, it's pretty short, but it's also... I like that it's short, not just because it's an easy read, but because the story is succinct, I believe is the correct word, to the point. There's not, a lot of filler stuff to just pad out the story. And I like that. Essentially, what it's about is it starts off with the main character, whose name is Spider Jerusalem. That's right, Spider Jerusalem. And he had been in seclusion for 5 years, somewhere in some cabin in some mountains or something. And he did that because he had written and published several novels that became very popular, and so he became a well-known, I guess you could say, a literary figure, and he got tired of being hounded by the public, and he wanted to get away from all that, so he went up into the mountains for 5 years, of course living off of all the money he made from his novels, and also an advance that he got from his publisher for future novels, which he ended up never writing the whole time he was in the mountains. And so because of that, he runs out of money, runs out of supplies, so he's forced to go back to civilization, back into the city. And it's pretty interesting. I don't know if... I want to say this is supposed to take place sometime in the future, or possibly an alternate reality of some kind. But either way, it's interesting because the city that's depicted in this, it's overcrowded, like one would expect, but severely overcrowded, and there's a lot of poverty. And not only that, there's this interesting kind of movement where I guess there's these people who refer to themselves as transients, meaning that, and it's not just because they move around a lot, but it's actually because something happens where it gets to the point where I guess technology advances so much, and people are then allowed to, I guess, splice their own DNA with the DNA of other creatures and also other beings, beings from other planetary civilizations or something like that. And so they're able to do that. So people who can afford it, instead of going to some place for vacation, they go and they splice their DNA, say, with the DNA of a butterfly, and they get to experience what it's like to be a butterfly for a couple days, or they could be like a wolf, or or like I said, some kind of extraterrestrial being. But then eventually, I guess the technology, it becomes cheap enough that pretty much everyone and anyone can afford it. But what happens is, eventually, I guess, an entire group of people, what they decide to do is, rather than just splice their DNA with the DNA of another creature or being, just for a couple of days, they decide that they want to permanently combine their DNA with the DNA of different extraterrestrial beings. And I guess to be more exact, they choose to splice their DNA, combine it with the DNA of I want to say one certain race of extraterrestrials. And so what this does is it results in like half, so you get like this half human, half alien hybrid, I guess. And so you have like, what happens is like half of their face looks human and the other half looks alien, and they have, the alien half has, like a big eye and, of course, no pupil or anything like that, just relatively smooth, I guess, as far as the alien side of the face is concerned. And I believe also the same goes for their bodies too, but then it depends on each individual. Like the results like varies, but for most people, I guess, pretty much you can tell that they're transient because half of their face is human, the other half is extraterrestrial of some kind. And so, which is pretty interesting. I like that. And Spider Jerusalem, he gets involved with this transient movement because when he gets back into the city, he finds his old editor, because before he became a popular novelist, he was working at some newspaper, and although not like a traditional newspaper because it's supposed to be in some future, and more of just like a strictly digital kind of newspaper. So he was a columnist, and so he goes back and convinces his editor to let him write a new column. So Spider Jerusalem, then he interviews the leader of this transient movement, and the leader, he goes by the name, I want to say it's Fred Christ, I believe. Yeah, I'm pretty sure Fred Christ. As Fred or Frank? I think Fred. I should have reviewed this like right after I read it, but anyway, so yeah, Fred Christ, and of course he ends up, Spider Jerusalem, when he interviews him, and supposedly they have a history, because like way back before the transient movement, this guy Fred, him and Spider Jerusalem, they used to hang out and I guess like get into trouble and whatnot, and so that's how Spider Jerusalem he ends up being the only reporter that can get an in-depth interview with him, so he does it. But then quickly Spider Jerusalem, he realizes that this Fred Christ, of course he's no messiah, or he's no big important all-knowing leader like he makes himself out to be. He's pretty much just a hypocrite, and not only that, but a douchebag and an asshole, and so yeah, so the Spider like just kind of like writes him off, and he doesn't even like turn the interview to his editor. But then what happens is a lot of the transient people that are part of this transient group and movement, towards the latter half of the graphic novel, they stage this like protest, like a big protest, similar to like, I guess you could say like an equal rights protest. In fact, that's what they were fighting for, like because of the fact that these people chose to splice their DNA with that of the DNA of an extraterrestrial, and because of that, they're shunned, and I guess most of society kind of like, they don't take pity on them. They don't even like, I guess for most people, like most human beings, they don't understand why these people chose to do this to themselves, and so they consider them to be like pretty much less than human, and not normal, and so I mean which is similar to actual events that have occurred throughout history, which I found very interesting because there's a lot of parallels that one could easily draw and see between like this transient movement and then other movements that have occurred throughout history, like the civil rights movement, equal rights. I want to say the movement that was started by all the protests started by the suffragettes, and it's very interesting. I mean, I don't want to get into too many details, but and of course, eventually the cops come and they start beating up a lot of these transient people, and it gets really, really violent. That's another thing in this, like there's no holding back as far as the violence is concerned. So it was very interesting because, I mean, for me, like, I didn't know what to expect from this. I didn't expect that I was going to like it. I just gave it a shot and checked it out from my local library, and I ended up really liking it. I like the main character, Spider Jerusalem. He reminds me of another well-known reporter, also a writer. I want to say Hunter S. Thompson. Yeah, Hunter S. Thompson. I don't know how many people are familiar with him, with Hunter S. Thompson, but that's who this character reminds me of a lot. So, yeah, I don't know if you're familiar with Hunter S. Thompson. You probably have some kind of understanding of what this character is about, and except that he's not all about like just experimenting with different drugs or just wandering around, or like he essentially, I guess, he's not like so concerned with drugs and alcohol and all that. He kind of is, but not really as much as Hunter S. Thompson, but there's still similarities, I guess, between them. So I think so. And then, of course, the ending, like, it ends on a very interesting way. Like, not kind of a cliffhanger, but not really. So, because there's supposed to be other volumes, this is volume 1. And I definitely look forward to reading all the others. I do hope that my local library gets copies of the others soon. Yeah, I kind of like already put in my request for those, so I mean, as far as the rating goes, I gotta give this 5 stars, definitely 5 stars all the way. Yeah, like I said, I found it to be very interesting. I will say, like, if you're not into dark kind of stuff and slightly creepy kind of stuff and violent images depicted throughout a graphic novel, then there's a pretty good chance you won't like this. But otherwise, if you are, or even if you're looking to read something different, something that isn't just superhero stuff or fantasy stuff or sci-fi stuff. I mean, I guess you could say there's some sci-fi elements in this, but it's a little more than that, I feel. So, yeah, I mean, if you just want to read something different, I do recommend reading this, because, again, I was pleasantly surprised by it, and I feel like a lot of other people need to be aware of this graphic novel. Not only that, but just be aware of this character, Spider Jerusalem, because, I could easily see this kind of story being adapted into some kind of movie or something, or maybe like series of some kind, TV series, or I don't know, Netflix series, or because just for me, it was that interesting and intriguing, and awesome. I don't know what else to say about it. You know, again, I give it 5 out of 5 stars. I definitely highly recommend it to everyone, unless you're easily offended by certain things. So, yeah, that'll do it for my review of Transmetropolitan, Back on the Streets. Thanks for watching this. Thanks for listening. As always, till next time, don't forget, keep it real, keep on rocking, and peace.